Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session all about programmatic strategy. You might be thinking, who is your presenter here today? My name is Lena, and I'd like to welcome each and every one of you for being here with us. I have over 20 years of experience specializing in digital marketing, and we're also joined by our amazing moderator, Romy, who is going to be on the background and is going to be helping us with all of the different questions and all of the different comments, as well as sharing some very, very helpful and valuable links. So there is a lot of information. There's a lot of different lessons and a lot of different content that we do have. And we do have a number of pillars from building a business strategy to audience development, data management. Today, our focus is going to be very, very specific on the advertising side, but we do invite you to actually look at all of this content and all of this information. Now, how can we get the most out of this particular sessions? We essentially want to help you by showcasing a variety of tools, a variety of options that are in fact available to you. It is really, really important that these are just options. So keep that in mind, right? So when it comes to the world of digital publishing online, essentially, it's a very, very complex world, as I'm sure you probably can relate to. And each and every business is going to have different, unique challenges with a different audience and a varying amount of essentially resources that are available to us. So essentially what we're going to be showcasing is different case studies, actions, tools, resources, and those are only suggestions. They are options. The specific actions and the specific steps that you decide to take, they will absolutely need to be custom to your needs, to your experiences, as well as your overall aims and objectives. So, programmatic. Programmatic advertising essentially is more than just plug and play, right? Programmatic advertising essentially promises that the ad buying system is going to be more efficient and therefore cheaper by essentially automating the entire ad buying experience. It is as simple as plug and play, or is it that simple? So this is where we come in to consider more information for right now, as well as the overall future. What is our agenda today? What are our topics that we are going to be covering? So we have three main areas of focus. We're going to kick things off with the future of programmatic advertising. Essentially, the landscape is changing, it's evolving, and it will always have that dramatic effect essentially in the overall programmatic advertising in the future. The second area that we're going to be focusing today is that hybrid model. I'm sure a lot of us have been hearing about this hybrid model for a while. Essentially, that traditional human sales teams that are going to be working side to side with programmatic. Our third area of focus is going to be that programmatic funnel. So this is where essentially, how can we know that we are in fact getting the most out of this brand new hybrid model? We're essentially going to be running you through some of the options and some of the different tools that we have access to. So kicking things off with our first topic, the future of programmatic advertising. The landscape is changing, is evolving, right? We have the cookie apocalypse, right? So essentially, the cookie is crumbling, right? So in January 2020, I'm sure you probably have already heard, Google announced its plans to essentially to phase out those third-party cookies, over the next few years, just as Safari, just as Firefox have also done as well. So why is it that they decided to do this? Why is it they made this announcement? Third-party cookies essentially attempt to track individual browser usage, beyond just what's happening on that website, and they were essentially first loaded. So blocking them, it would essentially make web more secure and more private to users. But as many programmatic ad servers have depended very, very heavily on third-party cookies as part of all their overall wider campaigns. So, for example, cross-site retargeting, it means that all programmatic approach is going to have to change, to evolve. What does this mean for publishers? The death of the third-party cookies is essentially unlikely to affect Google's own advertising business, simply because Google collects user information in a plethora of different types of ways. So publishers, however, might find advertisers are looking essentially for alternative ways to run their campaigns. And this may have that knock-on effect on the way online publishers actually conduct business online. So, what are some of the different tools that we can actually utilize? So we have any number of tools in our toolbox that we can utilize, and those are experiments essentially that we can utilize to stay on top of these changes that are taking place. So because of these changes, and given that all of the different things that are happening into the programmatic campaign, we are going to want to essentially do everything we can to help advertisers to optimize the return on their investment. So here's something you can do right here, right now. We can use experiments. You can use experiments to test out the ad performance in essentially more detailed way than the basic, sort of that traditional A/B scheme. So let's walk through an example. What does it mean? So for example, a tool such as Display and Video 360, it does provide with an A/B testing framework that we can evaluate every dimension for a campaign and report back in terms of what performed best. So by splitting the cookies into mutually exclusive groups, essentially experiments, they let us test out different combinations for targeting, for settings, for creatives, just to name some examples. And essentially the findings, they can be used to improve that campaign mid-flight, or they can influence the planning for future campaigns as well. So using experiments, we can also report on key metrics. So what are some key metrics again? So CPC, click-through rate CTR, CPA, cost per acquisition, CVR, CPM, all of those different metrics. Now, there is an optimization view that essentially is going to show whether our insertion order and all of those line items, they are on track to hit that spend and those performance goals. So in that line item, we have different tables and the optimization view that will essentially show us recommendations for all the changes that we can make to improve the pacing as well as the performance. So the hybrid model, right? So our second topic of the day, the hybrid model. Human and machine working together side by side. So humans, and this is a big, big change, are making a comeback. We're cool again. Awesome. That's fantastic to hear, right? So let's actually look at a case study. How does that look like in action? So we have a case study that comes to us from Village Media. Village Media is a network of local news websites in Canada that essentially have a number of partner sites all across Canada, US, as well as the UK. So it takes essentially a number of multi-channel approach to sales using physical sales teams to essentially to go out there and to promote local advertising to businesses. So 74% of that overall revenue, I'm going to have a little bit of water. So let's try this again. So what is it that Village Media actually does? They take that multi-channel approach to sales and they use those physical sales teams, people, right, to go out there and to promote their products, their websites, to all of the different local businesses. So 74% of the revenue comes from that. Alongside, right, so we have the people side, and then alongside they have their newsletter campaigns that can help increase those overall contributions, and that's 4% of their overall business. Now, that third component, programmatic. This is when it's used to backfill that remaining inventory, and that's accounts for 22% of the revenue. So we see how the human side, 74% of the revenue, the newsletter side, 4% of the revenue, and programmatic layering in and essentially combining all of the tools and making them work harder, better, essentially producing much, much better results for them. So, what was life like before programmatic again? So, the very first banner ad. So, imagine 21 years ago. What were you doing 21 years ago? That was the very first banner ad that was, in fact, created. It was run by AT&T and it appeared on a site that is called hotwired.com. That was the original website, essentially, of Wired magazine. And the ad asked, have you ever clicked your mouse right here? Right? Have you ever done that? And essentially, an arrow pointed to a rather ominous prediction that spelled out in capital letters, you will, right? So, back in the day, before programmatic advertising and third-party cookie and all of those different brands, they could choose where to buy and space through the lens of that context. So, for instance, a sportswear retailer, they would simply choose display ads to have on sites that for to and targeting people that were likely to be buying sportswear in those particular sites. So sales teams, what did they do? They would go out there and they would sell ads on print and TV and radio, even those early websites, those early adopters. And then those two key points when they were sold, they were basically, reader, the base, the reach, essentially the numbers, as well as the context. What kind of topics did they actually showcase? So, how would they measure the impact? They use that statistical analysis approach. So, TV and radio, they have essentially made use of those statistical measurements almost from the very, very beginning. So, one of the effects of those changes taking place, specifically in the online advertising industry, was this reliance on the quality of that customer data. It was to encourage that shift, implementing, a TV type of approach into that statistical currency. It's only actually relatively recently that a true revolution when it comes to advertising has become more evident. It's fueled by the rise of ad tech or the advertising technology and the buying and selling of all of these different types of advertising that is in fact evolving at a mind-boggling pace. So programmatic plug and play. So introducing the programmatic ads that essentially any type of publisher could in fact benefit without having that sales team or having that technical expertise. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. So along came programmatic, right? So programmatic buying isn't just essentially efficient, it leads to more, better, sophisticated and relevant campaigns. Now, how does it do that? Four different ways. The buying process, it's automated. The second way, and it's only the highest paying ads would in fact go live. The third way, the programmatic is more efficient. Essentially, it will showcase the right ads to the right audience at the right time. The fourth way, freeing up our time to essentially focus on our strategy and our innovation. So all you have to do essentially is dropping that little bit of AdSense code into our website and immediately it starts working. And this is actually a direct quote from Jack Herrick, from WikiHow founder and CEO. So WikiHow, in fact, is an excellent example when it comes to selling advertising space across a huge site without having to hire that dedicated sales team. And there's a lot of different resources that Romy is going to be sharing with us. So do watch out for the comments for all of those different resources. So the future, it's a hybrid future. So third-party cookies are being blocked, are going away. And then we have that hybrid, which essentially means human and machine working together. to have those sales that are going to be likely, and those programmatic techniques that are going to be likely to emerge. So now, as we know, that third-party cookie, right? It's on its way out. It is crumbling. We know that. We've heard that. So while advertisers, and software companies alike, scrambling to find an alternative to that solution, here's a couple of predictions that should essentially stand no matter what the future is going to hold. So, two predictions. One, the emergence of that direct sales team with those ideas, generating revenue, working more closely with editors and journalists. The second sort of prediction is going to be that programmatic model. It will not go away. It is in fact here to stay. However, it will continue to change, to adapt, and to evolve in such a way that it will enhance that overall human driven sales relationship with the overall advertisers. So let's actually go into that direct sales and those exclusive deals. So here's an example I want you to imagine, right? How is it that human and computer working together in the hybrid model? So imagine our in-house team focuses on directly negotiating those high priority ads, such as sponsorships or full take page overs or custom creative integrations. So we could propose that share voice type of advertising that will specifically give advertisers, a certain share of that particular page on our website. Now, how would this involve? This would essentially involve building those relationships with those advertisers. So we hold that relationship in-house internally. And we can then secure that quarterly or yearly agreement on a specific set CPM that is going to be essentially filling out our ad placements. So in other words, our sales team, they sell premium space directly. What happens to the remaining ad space? It would essentially filter into the programmatic world. So direct sales teams working alongside with editors, with journalists, it means that we are moving forward and we're evolving from that old model of sales versus journalists to actually the current model of developers and journalists and sales, towards even a hybrid model that is going to be sales and developer and journalists all working together under one roof. So the third topic that we're going to be discussing today, it is all about that programmatic funnel. So let's see how this hybrid approach might actually utilize those direct sales relationships and to actually help us draw out and maximize our revenue into this new style model that is known as that programmatic funnel. So hold on a second. What is a programmatic funnel again? Let's go through some definitions just to make sure we're all on the same page. So essentially, if the premium slots are booked up by our actual sales team, our human sales team, what happens to the remaining ad spaces, that filter into the programmatic model? What is this programmatic funnel? So working essentially from the most valuable space with the highest premiums all the way down to the least expensive ads. The funnel essentially is going to incorporate 6 different components. So it's going to incorporate that programmatic guaranteed deals, which is essentially the most premium, typically the higher price, the header bidding, the preferred deal, the private action, the open auction, and 6, last but not least, that self-service, the least premium. And essentially, those an example of that would be, those AdSense, the auto deals, which is a simple automated that self-service option. So all of these 6 different things are going to come together and work together in this funnel. So as we're going through this session, what I want you to think about, right, and I want you to actually start addressing that, taking some notes. Do you know essentially how to get started with programmatic? What are some of those premium offering. So I want you to start essentially categorizing, putting things into action as we're going through the session, taking your own notes, and really identifying sort of where is it that we can get started and how we can get started specifically with those premium offerings. So some options and some tools we can utilize. Private auctions. So we're introducing private auctions. Essentially, this is in which only whitelisted buyers for specific inventory are in fact allowed to bid. So private auctions, they are programmatic deals that allow publishers to create that higher priority auction that is available only to whitelisted buyers of their specific choice that they have indicated for specific inventory. And the publisher decides who they are going to make this available to. So within the private auction, essentially publishers can establish that specific price, that float price, and then with those chosen advertisers, let this typically smaller group of buyers to compete against each other in an exclusive private programmatic marketplace auction. Now, we do want to add another note that display and video 360 is, that DSP, that demand side platform that can in fact help us manage those private auctions. So how do we get started with those private auctions? What are the steps that we need to take in order to make these private auctions a reality? So 3 different steps that can help us get started with those private auctions. So the very, very first step within the private auction, essentially the publisher establishes that specific, that floor price within the chosen, typically smaller group of advertisers. Now, the second step, the small group of buyers, they come in and they compete in this exclusive, private, programmatic marketplace within the auction. The third step, any active private auction can in fact be associated with a specific client, including the negotiation. So some really, really helpful steps to actually make this a reality. Now, we have some other tools we can also utilize as well. And this is where we're going to be introducing those preferred deals, which essentially they're directly negotiated agreements between the publisher and advertisers. So let's actually go in and understand those a little bit better. What is it that they are? How is it that we can utilize them? So preferred deals is in fact something different. It's essentially an offering that attracts those higher premium than the private auctions. They essentially enable and allow publishers to negotiate those fixed price, first look deals with specific advertisers. Typically, the CPM is going to be higher than the regular programmatic, and it is going to be on par with direct sales because essentially advertisers, they're seeking out those impressions based on specific data that's available or based on the advertiser action that they had taken previously. So these preferred deals, they are that direct agreement between publisher and advertiser, and typically advertisers, they approach the publishers about specific ad size and the placement and the audience, and those two parties, they negotiate an accurate fixed price for the impressions themselves. So essentially, it used to be advertisers, would send publishers and then an ad tag, and then they would like to automate this particular ad placement. Now the entire execution, it runs programmatically through the DSP, that demand side platform, as well as an SSP, that supply side platform. So as an example, Google Ads Manager, Display and Video 360, they run seamlessly, automatically, where essentially a deal ID gets things moving to create that preferred deal. So essentially, with preferred deals, the CPM tends to be much higher than the regular programmatic transaction, and it is on par with those direct sales relationship due to the fact essentially that advertisers are seeking out those specific impressions based on availability, based on data that they have gathered by the advertiser through all of the previous campaigns that they have in fact managed. So, how do we make this a reality? What are the different steps that we need to follow in order for us to get started with the preferred deals? So, three specific steps that can help us get started with preferred deals. Step number one, we create a proposal right in Ads Manager. So, all preferred deals, they will start with a proposal. Once the proposal has been created, then it's ready to be sent to the buyer directly. Step number two, essentially the publisher and the advertiser, they negotiate the terms by sending a proposal between the publisher and the buyer until both parties come to an agreement. Step number three, this is where we request essentially the acceptance and we finalize the deal. So once the deal is finalized, essentially the advertiser, the buyer, it has that initial or that preferred opportunity to come in and to bid on an inventory that is negotiated at a fixed CPM price. So another tool that we can also utilize is header bidding. So header bidding is also known as advanced bidding or pre-bidding, and essentially it's an advanced form of programmatic technique where publishers can actually offer up their inventory to multiple ad exchanges at the same time before making those calls to their ad servers. So by essentially allowing those multiple demand sources, with the same ad inventory at the same time, as publishers, they can increase their yield and make more money. So in a way, for publishers, they can simultaneously offer ad space to numerous SSPs or to numerous ad exchanges all at the same time. It also allows publishers to have a lot more control, significant more control over the overall process, as well as essentially who they can be selling their inventory to as well. Another tool that we can also utilize is open bidding. It used to be known as exchange bidding dynamic allocation. So EBDA, exchange bidding dynamic allocation. Maybe that's a term that you're familiar with. So what is open bidding again? Very simple terms, open bidding is a type of an automated bidding that has been proven to increase yields up to 35%. So it can help us up to 35%. So open bidding, essentially, what does it do? It allows us to invite those third-party demand partners to compete for our specific inventory, for the publisher inventory, in that single auction in real time. Server to server bidding. So with open bidding in Ads Manager, it provides that simplified tracking, reporting, and billing. Essentially, open bidding is easier to implement than header bidding because we can use our existing tagging right on our website, right on our apps, or we can opt for an SDK implementation. So open bidding essentially in Ads Manager, it will reduce that latency that was historically associated with header type of bidding. So essentially our ad manager is going to communicate directly with those third-party demand partners in that server-to-server connection. So under header bidding, that complex custom header bidding, that code that was usually required to facilitate this type of communication, and essentially that caused that latency for our websites, for our apps, which typically did not produce the best user experience. Typically was a suboptimal user experience. So this eligible inventory that is going to be trafficked essentially in Ads Manager, it can take advantage of this open bidding with no additional technical development required. So essentially it can help us from a revenue point of view, and we don't necessarily have to become more technical. It's a win-win all around. So how do we make this a reality? What are the steps that we're going to be following in order to get started with open bidding? 3 steps. Step number 1 is essentially primary, also known as mapped. That ad exchange account is required. So we absolutely need to have that in place. So this primary account, it will also going to be linked with our ads manager network, and is going to be set as the default for dynamic allocation. Step number 2, we can contact our Google account manager to sign in that open bidding to our ad exchange contract. Essentially, this is a one-time process, right? So we go ahead, we do it that first time, and it does not need to be completed for each and every open bidding buyer. So we go ahead, get it done, and then we're ready to move to step number 3. So this is where essentially we can ensure that we have available inventory from our Google publisher tags, essentially from our website to the Google mobile ads, the SDK, or the mobile apps. Or we can also utilize the IMA SDK, and this is very, very specific to video. So programmatic guaranteed. So what is programmatic guaranteed? Essentially, it is a premium offering. It essentially modernizes that direct ad buying by allowing us as publishers and advertisers to implement that direct reservation buys in a very easy way to do. So in fact, we have a report from Boston Consulting Group that found out that publishers saved 57% more time. So 57% more time. And agencies and advertisers, they saved 29%. And when they were using programmatic guaranteed deals, as opposed to those traditional reservations, still maintaining that same level of control over their campaigns. What are some other benefits? So I'm going to take you through about 5 different benefits. No particular order. Another benefit is a simpler workflow. So this is where we can save costs, we can increase that efficiency with a streamlined ad trafficking, and we can eliminate that need for copy and pasting tags and essentially issuing all of those insertion orders. The second way that it can help us, we can get paid in 30 days. So receive that guaranteed in full on-time payments that are going to be processed and paid by Google in those 30 days after our campaign. So there's no need for us to wait and to collect payment from all of those different buyers. The third way that this can actually help us, that can benefit us, we can have those reduced discrepancies, that reduced waste, and we can actually integrate those buy and sell side platforms and enable faster troubleshooting with fewer discrepancies. The fourth benefit, better performance. Who doesn't want better performance? So our partners, essentially, they can come in, they can see the higher CPMs, and they can use features like programmatic guaranteed, with those audience lists that can essentially unlock that new class, new way, improved way of media buying. And buyers can actually guarantee that purchasing only for those audience that they wish to reach out to. The last way that this can actually help us out, the last benefit, it is actually delivering more to our advertisers. We're adding that value for our clients with essentially advanced functionality and advanced features like buying and serving those custom ad formats programmatically to improve the overall performance, reach, as well as measurement. So some really, really fantastic benefits that we can actually utilize. So how do we make this a reality? What are the different steps that we can follow? So 3 different steps. Step number 1 to get started with Programmatic Guaranteed is to create a proposal in Ads Manager. So all Programmatic Guaranteed deals, they do start out with a proposal. So once the proposal is created, then it's sent to the buyer directly. So step number 2, the publisher and the advertiser, they negotiate the terms. So they negotiate the terms by sending a proposal between the two until they're both satisfied, which brings us to step number 3, that request and acceptance to finalize, to complete the overall deal. So you might be thinking, does this actually work? Well, here's a case study. This case study comes to us from Condé Nast, which essentially added those programmatic guaranteed inventory to their existing direct deals. They have a wide variety of very well-known iconic titles such as Vogue, Vanity Fair, Bon Appetit, The New Yorker. You might be familiar with some of them. And they operate some of the most coveted destinations for advertisers. So direct deals, they have been a core component of their overall digital business right from the very, very beginning. Recently, the company has actually decided to essentially have been selling more of their premium inventory by just programmatic guaranteed. At the same time, what they did is that they also trained their teams. They hired new programmatic experts and they educated ad clients on all of the different benefits. Over the last 2 years, the company's programmatic guaranteed order volume has increased by 41%, and revenue has grown by 93%. So let's repeat those numbers because these are really, really impressive numbers. Over the last 2 years, their programmatic guaranteed order volume increased by 41%, revenue growth by 93%. Who doesn't want to see those numbers? And they have naturally outpaced the marketplace norms. We have another case study. We have another example. And this comes to us from Post Media, that is a Canadian press agency with correspondents in Canada and Europe as well as in the US. So how did they utilize programmatic guaranteed? They utilized it to reduce that manual process for their operation teams, to essentially increase those efficiencies and to have those direct sales and to show essentially the value of programmatic to their advertisers. This approach, by adopting this approach, Post Media has saved 60% of the overall effort that is required by the sales team, and they have increased the time available to essentially go out there and make more business, conduct more business, and spend more time with their advertisers and build those relationships. So the key takeaway here is that programmatic has in fact reduced the overall time required by the human sales team. And then essentially it demonstrates how the two can work together, utilizing the machine to do the things that it does really well and allowing the people to go out there and to spend more time essentially building those relationships and do what they do well, which is talk to clients. So how do we make this a reality? 3 different steps. Step number 1, the future for programmatic ads essentially is the landscape is overall changing, and it will have that dramatic effect for programmatic ads in the future, right? So we need to look at all these different tools and we need to make sure that we adjust. The second tool is that hybrid model, combining that traditional human sales team alongside essentially the machine, alongside programmatic. And the third area it can be very, very helpful is that programmatic funnel, right? So this is where we actually know we're running through all of these different options and we know how to make the most out of that hybrid model. So I know we have a number of people that have joined us today and we have a very, very active audience. So let's see. Oh, we do have a number of questions, which is great, which is fantastic. So we'll do our very best to cover some of them. So why is that A/B testing important? So A/B testing, which is also known as split testing, essentially is that process of comparing 2 versions, whether it's 2 versions of an email, 2 versions of creative, 2 versions of web page, and then we can measure the difference in performance. Essentially, we can do this by giving one version to one group and another version to another group. And then we can see if there is a variation between the two versions, which one performs better. I see we have another question, which is great. So we're being asked to give some examples regarding programmatic buying. So let's work through an example. So imagine a programmatic advertising platform. Essentially, what does it do? It enables marketers and advertisers to automate that whole buying process and the management of our overall digital advertising campaigns. So essentially, this includes that media buying, that ad placement, that performance tracking, the campaign optimization. So all these different platforms, they also offer that editing tool to design the overall campaign creative. So the benefits, essentially, that whole process, it is seamless, it is automated. The second benefit is that only those highest paying ads are the ones that are going to be going live. The third benefit is essentially the right ads at the right time with the right audience. And fourth and last benefit is all about freeing up our time to specifically focus on the strategy, to specifically focus on the overall innovation. So we have come to the end of our session. We appreciate that we have a lot of different content, and we would very much like to invite you to participate in our feedback forum. Feedback is very much a gift. We love to hear from you. All of the content, all of the information that we discuss here today, please do fill out the feedback form. Literally takes only a couple of minutes. We take the time to read all of this information, to put it together, and to make sure that we are adjusting our sessions, our seminars, as well as our content. And we have a lot of different lessons in a lot of different areas, in a lot of different categories. So we definitely invite you to come back and to continue your overall journey. So we have those deep dive sessions. So this is where you have the opportunity to ask further questions, to get answers directly from that local Google team. So we definitely invite you to join us in those future sessions. And like I said, feedback is a gift. Your feedback is really important to us. This is how we evolve. This is how we improve. This is how we make things better. So we would love to hear from you. Do let us know. All feedback is very valuable. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. I know we covered a lot of content and a lot of information. We really appreciate each and every one of you for being here today. And we have come to the end of our session. So we're going to be ending the broadcast, and we look forward to seeing you at a future session. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.